Authority Advisory Board at 9 a.m. Let's do a roll call.
Tom DeBee.
Here.
Arlene Zortman.
Here.
Jean Christopher.
Here.
Glenn Pepper.
Here.
And then Molly O'Donnell.
Here.
Lisa Gallagher.
Here.
Sarah Arney.
Here.
And Tracy DeFrancesco.
Here.
And Jenna Reeves.
Jenna, perfect. Right on time. So number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from April 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve with one stipulation. Under section B, item 9, I think we're restriping the parking, not restripping.
Yeah.
Well, restripping would work too.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion other than one change? All right, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Let's go on to number 3, public invited to be heard. Seeing no one. Let's go on to number 4, organizational updates. A is advisory board application interviews.
All right, so the time is fast approaching. May 15th, right now, that's what I wrote down. On May 15th, we do have time set aside for interviews. We had 7 or 8. 8 applications for 2 spots, which are currently occupied by Jean and Arlene. So we just need to decide who wants to, we should have 2 board members, well, that's my recommendation, 2 board members to complete the interview process. If you go past 2, then it's a public meeting. So we would just need to see about availability for that, and then also confirm whether you want to use the interview questions that we used the last round that are only about 6 months old, or redo them for May 15th.
You said May 15th, so it's a Monday.
Monday from,
It's in the morning, right?
yes,
Yeah.
on, this coming Monday.
Yes.
We have a hold from 8 to 2 currently.
Yes.
Okay.
And that'd be at the Civic Center.
Well, I just want to say that I'm excited that we're getting a bunch of applicants.
Yeah,
Because
that's
in the
great.
past, it hasn't been like that, so.
Yeah.
So we are the only ones that I might be slightly off, but we are definitely the only ones with more applicants than spots. Every other city board and commission, they don't have enough to fill all their spaces.
Wow.
So that is great. There's just a big interest in housing and
So anybody, I would be interested in doing it.
okay. And then we do have Carrie and Lauren that we could ask if we wanted, unless Glenn or Jenna, you're interested in those interviews. I'm sorry? Okay. No? Okay, so let's ask Lauren and Carrie. And Lisa and I will be there as well. So last time, we don't run the interviews, and the questions and everything are all read by you, but we just help provide some comments afterwards for your consideration. If there's a question, we can answer. Yeah.
They don't hear what it should do.
Yeah.
It's
Basically,
a verification.
Really, we're just making recommendations to the
Right. So the city council, or the LHAAB board.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you know what date they're set for that?
Yes, they're doing it, I believe, like June 7th.
And then would you like to use the interview, we can send them around and everybody can.
No, I remember answering, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, we should.
I don't recall hearing any feedback when Jean and Arlene did them that there was anything that needed to be tweaked, but if you had any thoughts about that, you can always provide it. Well, you're also interviewing with them, so maybe you don't provide feedback.
This is a strange situation.
Yeah. So
I forgot about it.
we'll let Tom and either Lauren or Carrie, if they're available, take a look at the interview questions. Okay.
then what was that date again, Erica? June?
June 17th for, and we're guys are going to be on for the 15th.
Yeah. Is that it then on that? Let's go on to 5 development and project updates.
So I just wanted to give a couple of updates on what we have going on. This is not inclusive of everything going on, there's a lot. But for the big ones, for Village Place, which is being renamed Village on Main, we just yesterday had a 3.5-hour meeting with the architects and the construction contractors and all of the civil engineers and everybody to really start nailing down the design. And so we've put in the tax credit application in early April, so we should hear about that in July. But between now and August, we're going to try and wrap up the design plan so that they're ready to submit for building permits in August, and we will be able to construct in November, December. So we're going to be we're nailing down some critical items. We're looking at what we can afford in the budget, and we're finding some good ways to save and good ways to add on the things we really do want, like popcorn ceiling removal and paint throughout. Those are our two big ticket goals that we weren't sure that we were beginning to afford, but we're hopeful.
Is there asbestos?
Nope, no asbestos, no radon. All of those tests are complete. And so we'll be working here with the architects and the contractors pretty heavily for the next month or so, and then come back to the residents again and go over some of those last decision points. So that's going really well. Just waiting to hear on that tax credit report. The team also applied for CPG funding, and so that's in progress. That review, we're working on the final gap funding. Then,
So I'm just curious, how are your meetings going with the residents? Are they confrontational? Are they open-minded? Are they?
there's opinions, but it's definitely productive.
Good.
Okay?
Yeah.
Katie's the project manager on our side. She's been attending pretty frequently just to say what is going on right now, even if it's not a decision point for the residents at that point.
They're kept in the loop, they know what's going on, they know what's coming, the next steps, and then we try to schedule Katie out every 2 months so that she can bring that all back to them.
That does remind me that we have completed our hire of our relocation firm, which is HCPEC, and their professional relocation firm that I've worked with for years in the disaster program, and they're really amazing to work with. So we're just getting started with them. We'll start looping them in and have them come in and meet the residents as well. And then we hired an owner's rep this time because we just don't, I did it on Aspen Meadows. We just don't have the capacity in-house to do that. And just in meeting with them yesterday, it's money well spent just to make sure we're getting that third-party construction review. What I'm trying to look out for is things like accidental flooring issues. Get that third piece of advice coming in. So
Faucet issues and, Okay. I'm tempted to ask, can I go over this? Because I don't know that happening.
go over the design.
Do
you wanna come to a resident meeting?
Because, I mean, it's really silly to have a faucet that washes the floor. It's, and I wish they would have this. But,
I mean, it's race.
no, the faucet is too big for the sink. So if you pump it this way, you're washing the counter instead of one of the things. And I'm like, this isn't practical. It's also a waste of water. But, it's the kitchen sink that isn't deep enough or wide enough, or the faucet is too tall. So I'm hoping those little details are going to get addressed, because I don't know who approved them. I'm like, but obviously they didn't know what would happen. So that's an aggravation that we've got to live with. And I don't want that to happen to the village boys.
You're welcome. Do you want to come to any resident meetings? And hear what the stuff that they're bringing forward? You can always chat with them about what to look for.
Yeah, let me know when they are, I'd appreciate it, yeah.
Right.
I'm just, you know, one of those watching out for the, you know,
Mhm.
and we don't want to keep making the same mistakes.
Right, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, it looks like it on paper might be good.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
oh,
and you know,
practicality.
Aspen Meadows was different because LHA was just handed it. You know, they didn't have, LHA didn't have a say, let alone the residents. So, you know, it's just, you know, that's all those lessons, you know.
And then when are we gonna find out about the tax credits then?
July-ish.
July.
Should be your July.
Alright.
So that's Village on Main. Just trying to switch over.
And then what, in terms of the CDBG funding, what is that? Is that just a gap?
Yeah, fun. Mhm.
Okay.
So that would be, the application has been submitted. It's gonna get reviewed by the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board this Thursday. And they'll make recommendations and it'll be considered by council June 20th.
I think the big question in this is what does inflation do to all of this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could very well get into the bid process and we're value engineering or cutting.
Yeah.
Just based on what our experience has been. Excuse me, what our experience has been over the last year and a half with almost every project we have.
We are, we've been talking about that and trying to plan for it as much as you can. We are doing a really different type of bid process, trying to anticipate that and be able to be more nimble, which is we're building in adults is what we call them. Is it additional alternatives or additive alternatives? Anyway, we're building those in up front so we can bid depending on pricing. We can grab them right off the bat versus having to rebid things or rejigger the whole priority list. So we're trying to build that priority list in so we can at least be nimble depending on how that goes.
Have you talked to Valerie about the best value bidding? You might want to. We just ran our first test case, and I can't get into specifics. But the margin that we were over was under $200,000, which is the narrowest margin we've seen so far.
That's good.
So you might want to tinker on
We do have the general contractor selected, so it's more the subs that we're going for
Okay.
and all the materials.
Okay, may not work.
But I'll still ask her about
I
it.
don't think it'll work.
Okay.
So
So then when would we start taking bids from subs?
Because, so after you get the tax credit award, so you're comfortable entering into those contracts. So that would be, we do want to do pre-purchases so that they're not waiting for closing in November and then going out to buy materials and stuff. So we're going to be planning on how to get some items purchased ahead of time, order appliances, etc.
Yeah.
So it should be shortly after July. We'll have finalized those plans in August. I'll write around.
And then one thing I forgot to tell you is Kimberly met with the county and they're not using all their parking spots, and so she made a request to move parking over there during construction. They said, sure, we'll talk about it, so we need to ping Kimberly.
We need to talk to her anyways about parking, because we're gonna do a resident survey to see if anybody would be interested in parking over there long term.
Yeah. So anyway, she's kind of cleared the deck with them during construction to move cars over.
Okay. Any other questions on Village on Main?
I had one.
If it comes back, just ready it up.
No, when you were talking about pre-purchase, and I was wondering if there was some way to get a price lock. If you're with a contractor, you know, material or whatever, like, you know, we are concerned about inflation and availability. And my other question was, are we doing anything to ensure we're dealing with as much American goods as we can.
So it's not a requirement on this project.
But is it, a preference whenever we can?
Let me talk about purchasing about that.
Okay,
Um,
and I know there's a cost issue too, but,
right.
I don't want refrigerators lost at the Port of Los Angeles.
I do think that the situation there is eased up some.
Okay.
But they do have really good contacts. I mean, they do these things all the time, and they definitely have their contacts that are responsive and don't get them in a pickle that way.
Yeah.
That can't guarantee everything, but that's what the pre-purchase is for. If we can start doing pre-purchase on items in that August-September timeline, we'll have things ready to rock by January, whenever that specific piece of work is happening. We're doing our best to try and plan for it, but we won't be able to anticipate everything.
I know, okay.
Yeah, generally the issues that are creating problems is anything related to like electrical work, so
Yeah.
panels and things like that.
Mhm.
And even when you do pre-purchase them, one of our fire stations, we're still waiting for it to come in. And so, so you'll go into your electrical work, especially transformers, panels are an issue. This project, I don't think will have that.
Sure.
We're not redoing the electrical system. And then it tends to be things associated with your horizontal infrastructure like pipe, concrete, not concrete as much, but pipe and things like that. That tends to be where we're seeing the rub. Now, all of that, we're seeing the rub of the pricing.
Yeah.
And that's just what's happening in the market. But this project's a little bit different because it's not really the base materials. And as long as we can stay away from changing transformers and things like that, we should be okay.
All right, moving on to the overland. So the board, the LHA board and the LHDC board have signed a purchase and sale agreement to transfer the land from LHDC to LHA, and we're trying to get closing to occur by next Friday, the 19th. And so the land will be transferred over. That uses up a portion of the ARPA funds, which we're trying to get out the door as quick as we can. And then we are working towards tax credit application in August 1st, and looking for gap funding right now, and looking at, they're doing design work to try and value engineer and make sure we've got a budget that works, and looking at all of our options for funding for the early childhood education center that we're hoping to do with that, because we would have to have some of that funding committed at the time we go in for tax credits. So there's a lot of outreach and planning going on right now.
So I have a question. Is there any possibility that if you do not spend all the ARPA funds that they will be asked to be returned?
Yes. So we're trying to get as much out the door as possible, at least get it obligated, so contracted to where it's going. And if we don't have to contract it out, trying to spend it within the city as fast as we can. So we are making some modifications to our plans to try and get that spent as fast as possible, not on Homer, but on some other projects. But yes, we're trying to get it solidified ASAP, so that that's not an option for us.
And if we have to, push comes to shove, we've already done some of this, we can interchange ARPA money with, depending on what it is, ARPA money with Affordable Housing Fund, or if there's another ARPA eligible and another fund, we can spend it there and pull it here, to ensure that we don't get the claw back.
Yeah. And you have until what, October of 24?
December 24 to obligate it, so to have it
Okay.
either spent if it's being spent in the house or contracted to be spent, and then actually spent by the end of 2026.
Okay.
But an option is we're allowed to land bank with it. And so if we needed to make a move quickly just to get the money spent and not necessarily be ready to move forward with development yet, we could. That's what we're thinking about possibly considering for the affordable assisted living project that we have on the books. That's really going to be a long, it's just more involved from the planning. But if we needed to hustle, that's something we could look at doing.
Okay.
just getting that at least under wraps. American Rescue Plan Act, so it's CARES Act money that came through for COVID relief. So the city got like 11.5 million, 8.5 was designated for, I was thinking about the housing, the total, 12 million and change, 8.5 was dedicated for affordable housing by the City Council.
And then we allocated 3 million
Yeah, but affordable
housing for 11 million into it. And then, so some is rental properties on the housing authority side. Other, part of it is land banking, what we did as part of the Costco project. So between the Affordable Housing Fund and the ARPA dollars, we acquired 9 acres of land as part of that project. That's shifting more to the city side because we're looking at the development of affordable and attainable home ownership opportunities. So that's not in the housing authority's bailiwick, but it's all in the same group that's working on this.
So we've completed expenditure of just over 2.5 million expenditure. So that's done. And then by mid-year, we will have spent another 3.2. So we're doing really well on our expenditure rate. It's just really planning for the projects that we're on the end of our timeline, how to plan for those. Any other more questions? Okay, Zinnia. This is the permanent supportive housing next to the suites. This is in full closing mode. Closing on the tax credit and financing is anticipated on May 24th. It has to be done by May 31st. So it is the final push, which is always a push, no matter how much you plan ahead. So we planned ahead a lot for this one, but we still are wrapping up final items in short order. So that's happening. This is the first time that the LHAAB has entered into a third-party property management agreement, because we're special limited partners because you really need that for these line-type projects as a housing authority, but we don't own the property, and so we're not in the ownership structure necessarily. But we are going to be managing the property, and so we're going through our very first property management agreement. And we're just really trying to do a really good job at that, even if it's pretty much right at the end of up to the deadline. But we're trying to do a really good job because that's what we would use in for future models. So we're just trying to anticipate everything we can to make sure it gets included, budget properly, staffing plan, all of that type of thing. So that is hot and heavy at the moment. And we're shooting to have that property management agreement considered by the board next Tuesday.
That's going to review it.
Yeah. By the suites.
Yep.
So then those assets will not be in our books, it's going to be more of a manager.
Yep. Yep. So this is a model we are looking to use more in the future. It is our first go at it, so we're really trying to plan ahead.
So we won't get a chance to see it.
It is still an attorney back and forth as we speak. It has to be done by Friday.
Totally, yeah.
So
Totally, yeah.
it is, yes. That's really, Zinnia it's a huge one right now, but that's really where we're at. All of it is, it's just a lot of attorney reviews back and forth right now, so. And then construction will start right after in June. I haven't heard yet. I think everyone's too busy to see if we're going to plan a ribbon cutting or groundbreaking. So we'll see about that. Yes. And if so, we'll apply to it.
That would be good to do.
I agree.
Just based on,
What else involved?
I've been letting folks know what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think more of a marketing perspective.
And
Scott, or dump it into, talk to Scott, and then have him work on this a little bit, spending time on it.
Yeah, I mean, typically Element
Well,
would
whatever,
go
yeah.
for it, but yeah, we would include our people too, to make sure there's good city coverage. Any other questions? So I next wanted to just do a brief update on the Recovery Cafe. So this is the substance abuse counseling and resource services. We are working to see if we can do an addition to the suites so that they can have a permanent home there, and which would be a win-win for them and then for us with our suites and Zinnia residents and really any LHA resident, but having them there on site would be really a big win. And so they're in the middle of feasibility review, and it looks like it really is feasible to do, assuming we can figure out all the utility relocations, because it's just very crowded. And so we're working, the Recovery Cafe team and their architects are working with the city, going through the pre-application process and everything to figure out the plan. So that is just moving along, and we're working on their grant funding right now on the city side. So they're about to submit their first reimbursements to start really having a real project here.
So, that's a question. I'm curious about how the recovery cafe is, but I don't really understand.
What it is.
That exception.
Yep. So it's substance abuse. It's a community of people seeking recovery from substance abuse. So they have counseling, they have group meetings, they have job training, they have resource navigation to help find whatever they need to be successful in their path to recovery. And in this case, once they're in a permanent home, they want a commercial kitchen to train folks how to be baristas, because food service is a good option for many folks trying to transition out of recovery and sometimes homelessness, etc. But if you are in recovery, and like a restaurant job with evening work is not always the best option. There's just a lot more exposure. But coffee shops with morning work is something that they find really successful for their folks, and so it's a job training opportunity there too. It's a nonprofit. Recovery Cafe is a national organization, so this is a Longmont chapter.
So what is our involvement?
Basically, we would be doing a ground lease and getting approval from the investors of the suites to build an addition onto the building so that they can have that commercial space. Yeah, there would be a lease situation of some sort, whether that would be, we haven't gotten that far in terms of what that would look like. But certainly a ground lease for the land, they would likely own the building, and then we would figure out the long-term plans. But it would be direct access for suites and recovery and Zinnia residents to access their services, which would be really big.
So part of the issue is, a significant number of our challenges with the residents of that location. Actually, recovery is sort of that thing that's important, because substance abuse is something we continue to deal with. This model actually started, I think, in the Northwest Seattle, and what they were doing. And so one of the challenges that we have is when we're in the system, even when we have people with MHP vouchers and things like that, we can't technically mandate that they participate in counseling and things like that because of federal rules. So what we identified when we were talking about it is, A, we know what the issues are there. B, we can't mandate that people go to counseling sessions and do things like that. And what we've seen from Recovery Cafe in terms of the people they've been interacting, they're operating out of a church basement now. But they tend to have some success with individuals and really working with them so they're able to shift them. And so what we were thinking is that if we can co-locate, knowing that Zinnia is coming in, we have this there, we typically know kind of what the issues are people are struggling with, that if we have this facility there, people may opt in individually to kind of go in. And part of what they do is they realize people are going to relapse too. And so it's not like they cut you off, they continue working with you through those issues. And so unless you basically destroy the church, like what we had happen, they will continue to work with you. And so, you know, the group of individuals started doing this, and it makes a lot of sense. And where it hit me is actually, I think it was Steve Kukic who was part of the founding of that said, hey, we're looking at something to do, looking for a location, and it was like, well, why not?
It's the VA guy.
No, he's connected to a church.
So this is open and it's not dedicated to the schools.
Anyone in the community.
Anyone in the community.
But by having them co-located, trying to convince folks to leave for services, any type of
No, I
services.
understand that.
Yeah.
Bringing them there just to be accessible and do more outreach and that type of thing. I hope for success there.
So the security, they won't be going through
They'd have their own entrance facing the cul-de-sac there. There'd be a connection to the suites, a door, but it's not generally used for other plans.
Yeah, their values are radical hospitality, loving accountability, champion for recovery, stewardship, and an inclusive community. And yeah, check out, if you want to, check out their website, because they have some testimonials in there, what they're doing, sort of the history.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? The last thing I just wanted to mention is they're smaller projects, but they're still really impactful. We've got a number of CDBG funded projects coming through. So on Tuesday, the board will consider accepting CDBG funds through the special COVID program from the city to do accessibility improvements for people with disabilities at all LHA properties. That will be adding in ADA parking, redoing ramps that aren't at the right angles, making sure that we've got sensory units at every property, so that would be like strobe doorbells and fire alarms for people that have vision or hearing impairments. So the grant funds are coming in for that. We're out getting bids already, so that we expect to be done by the end of July and have all those improvements at all properties. And then we have 3 other regular CDBG funded projects, one of which is resurfacing the parking lot at the Hearthstone and Lodge. Again, we're working on bids. We're trying to work them together since we've got some concrete and asphalt work happening on the other project too. And then the playground at Aspen Meadows, in bidding again, gearing up because now we are approaching the season where it's construction for both of those types of projects. And then the security cameras that Sarah's helping us with to make sure we have an integrated system, fill gaps at properties that don't have cameras, including this one, and then make sure they are all on an integrated system that the city uses as well. So we're bidding that too. So hopefully by fall, we've got all of that complete.
So the parking lot at the suites is gonna be handled with Zinnia.
So we're going to, so Zinnia, they have to run utilities through the parking lot. So they're gonna put that back, they're gonna replace once that's through. And then once the construction's done and the heavy trucks are done coming through, then we're gonna look at what the need is at the suites and what areas to cover and how to do that. So we're just not gonna do it ahead of construction, because it's gonna be quite busy. And then make sure if there's any damage from the heavy trucks that we address it all in one fell swoop after.
There's some good place potholes.
Yep, we are working with the city, at least in the cul-de-sac, to make sure the potholes get addressed, and it's on their list for this year. But in the parking lot, yes, there are areas that need help.
And the parking lot would be part of the Zinnia project as well?
If they tear it up to put in the utility lines, they would put it back in better condition. And then we would look at, as a whole, what is best for the parking lot. Like, do we do just fix certain areas? Do we do a full resurfacing? We'll have to see.
So, Sarah, I know we were over the suites, there was a lot of complaints, issues about the scooter dealership. The conversations going on with them about the impact of this project.
So, yes, they are receiving notifications about the status of the project. Basically, they park, so the issue is their employees park in that cul-de-sac, and it's it's crowded. And we had we want to make sure pedestrian safety is being stood up. During construction, because it's a cul-de-sac, I mean, if anybody blocks access, then that's a problem. But generally, our trucks don't need the full cul-de-sac. They can access because then the entire parking lot is an easy place for turnarounds or whatever they need to do. But we'll just have to coordinate with them during construction so they know. They'll see what's going on as well.
Yeah, the only thing it's a public street, so we can't really stop parking in the cul-de-sac because it's a public street. They can't block entrances, or if there are potentially sightline issues where the traffic goes, then maybe we can kick that back a little bit. But outside of that, it's really talking to them. I don't know if we make contact with them.
That's kind of my question. It's not so much a tactical issue with the parking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because what I heard in that meeting, it's not very good.
It's been an issue for years, so,
Yeah.
yes, conversations are being had, and the same goes for the church. I mean, a lot of the residents go over there to walk or to smoke, so notifying those folks too. I mean, that's not much of a traffic issue, but a lot of folks use that to go through the streets. I know I do.
And it will be blocked out during construction because the building will be right there.
Probably block during. I don't know if it's some signage to.
Katie's gonna work with me on, dates as far as notification for fire and PD, so.
That's all I have for building updates. I mean, that's a lot.
What about
I can-
CPWD and Briarwood? Are we going to talk about that later?
No, we can talk about that now. So we're working with for the Veterans Community Project for the Briarwood. We're working with them right now on pricing for the property because they're working on finding funding and financing and all of the things they need. So that's an ongoing conversation. And then for CPWD, we met with them and they're ready. They have their financing in place. What we are doing is negotiating a services agreement. So we can take a price reduction in exchange for them providing some of the supportive services to our residents with disabilities that they can provide, and that would be really benefit for our residents. So that is something we're negotiating with them in exchange for a price reduction. So it's still going to be a good influx of income once the sale happens.
So, the Cobra project, I've had some questions from some of the locals about the lack of service, the lack of services in that area, which I don't, shopping, recreation center. Do we have any concerns about those issues?
So
And I see Safeway there.
there's a Safeway. Garden Acres Park is only about a block and a half from there, which is a large park with a lot of amenities. That's one of the reasons why we thought trying to bring community services in via either emergency, early childhood education, potentially a satellite library. We were trying to figure out how that would all work, knowing that there's a need for more city services in that area.
What about recreation? I've heard this complaint on that side of the city. In other meetings, there's no real good affordable with the lot. With the whole gym.
Closest thing to Planet Fitness, and that's on Main. There's no other place.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we have in North Longmont is there's no space to put anything. We were definitely as part of the bond initiative hearing that, but this space was purchased with Affordable Housing Fund, so it has to be used with that. But if you really look north of probably Mountain View, probably we're so constrained with space that there's not a lot of areas to build anything. And that's really the challenge with North Longmont.
We would plan a fitness center in the building for residents there. And the Oligarchy Ditch path is also just right there behind the property. So with that and Garden Acres Park, at least for this development, that's actually pretty good access. Yes. City side, there's other conversations.
Issue, maybe issue on this. We had a question, some of the other people said, we really have a good answer. Based on numbers.
Yeah, I think the big answer is space. I mean, for anything in terms of city facilities in that area of the community. This property is located next to a transit line, which is good. Key Supers, Walgreens. We've seen some restaurants coming in that area, so it's probably not as isolated as some other areas, but yeah, we don't have it. To Molly's point, is we were trying to figure out how to incorporate something else into it, to try to build up that area a little bit. And what killed us on that is it's not in a qualified census tract. It's not in a qualified census tract, so if it's in a qualified census tract, you can build some of those community amenities, and you can include it in basis, and the community can use it. And it's in part of the broader financing package. Because it's not in a qualified census tract, anything that's in that financing package has to be used for the sole purpose of the residents. And so that was another, it used to be, qualified census tract.
That's changing for Longmont every year.
It changes on this every year, so that was some of the challenges financially we had to deal with that project.
This property, like, for us.
The Stewart family, as in the Stewart Family Foundation, that was at least a prior owner before LHDC purchased it in about 2014.
When Wilbur Crossing was built, so there was a developer, John Cook, that had some property up there, and he partnered with, or he bought it, or partnered with Lyle Stewart. So that big tower in the middle of it was actually the radio tower that they used for the radio station that they owned. They ended up selling that to a big station out of Denver. So if you ever listen to like sports talk radio or
Hey, 104.3.
we have 104.3 the fan you'll hear in Denver and Longmont. Well, the reason they say that is because they're anchoring off of that tower. And so she kept the tower, they sold it, and then as part of the development, and that was back here in the visionary housing days, the housing authority and LHAAB came in and purchased some of the land for development, which is why we have the lot in Arsenal. And then this is basically laid valley for, I don't know how long, it was that way when I moved here. And we were paying HOA fees. That's kind of how we got it in. And when it came in, then it locked in that purpose was to sell it. But on affordable housing right now, the cost of land is so high that you want to develop whatever you want.
Any other questions?
Let's go on then to number 6, items for inputs for the LHA Board of Commissioners, a voucher program strategy discussion.
So we are starting to map out, the history of the LHA's voucher program, the future of the voucher program, starting to map out the key areas for us to dig in and figure out how old are our processes. Do processes need to change for the future? We're trying to work all that out, and we just wanted to bring a couple of the key pieces to this group to see if you had any feedback about where to take LHA's voucher program in the future. So kind of the history, we have been in partnership with PHP and BCHA since we founded the IGA was originally 1989, at least one of them, about not hoarding in our voucher holders when they cross our jurisdictional boundaries, so that LHA's voucher holders could go anywhere in Boulder County, including the city of Boulder, and vice versa. That did save like administrative work, but you know, now 1989 to now, you can see what that has done over the decades. And so we are doing research and we're going to be starting conversations as a region to say, you know, we've gotten this LHA's voucher program stabilized. We've been feeling that way for about a year. And now the time is to look to the future and towards what we want our voucher program to look like 10, 20 years down the road. And so we are analyzing the data that we have. So we know we have 420 or so vouchers, of which 36 voucher holders exit the city for their housing right now. And then we're trying to work with BCHA and VHP to gather their data. We know that BCHA's voucher holders, about 50% of them are in Longmont. And so the history really is LHA was development focused for the past couple of decades, even though they still got behind on that, which is why we're trying to catch up now. But the voucher programs at BCHA and VHP continue to grow, which is evidenced by the HUD funding increases they got year over year. And this year we're getting our first HUD increase in a number of years. So really looking at our regional partnerships, what LHA wants to do for our voucher program, because ours is quite a bit smaller than BCHA's and VHP's, and what do we want to do to grow ours in the future, work on that regional partnership, what works best for current day, and really just getting started on thinking about that. So we wanted you all to be able to give us any feedback that you might have about things that you would want the voucher program to look like in 10, 20 years.
Is there a difference? It seems like, from what I've understood, there's a block of money and so many vouchers. With that block of money, or could we increase the number of vouchers, but we have to stay within that block of money? But it would be less support per voucher holder.
Right.
Okay, and then what we're looking at is expending that block of money that we get. And what's the criteria for that? What criteria do we need to meet to expand that block of money?
Well, let's go back a little bit. So one, they give you X amount of dollars.
Right,
And they say you can issue X amount of vouchers.
right.
So it's not like you can reduce how much you're paying and go beyond.
You know.
Right, so that's a
right,
piece.
Yeah, I was just kind of diagramming it, but yeah, go ahead.
So one more thing and then I'll go into the mechanics. For example, we got a 7.5% increase in our HUD funds for this year, but because of inflation and rise in rents, and actually we don't have capacity to increase vouchers. We're just making up for inflation with our current voucher.
And that's basically what I was going to
Okay, sorry, Tracy.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
We have what we call a 2-year tool, and that analyzes how many vouchers we can issue.
okay,
And that's that's a monthly thing that we do, and it's a 2-year look at where we're going to be in 2 years, and how many vouchers we can issue. Right now we're at the maximum that we can issue. We figure 430. We're a little bit over that.
yeah, okay.
So we're at our maximum right now.
But what criteria do we need to meet in order to expand and to get more funds? Is there anything we can do, or are we stuck with, like the qualified area kind of thing?
So one of the things that we can apply for new funding anytime that comes up. That doesn't come up very often.
Yeah.
If it does come up, it's in a form of a different type of a voucher.
Gotcha.
You know, it's the
Yeah.
dash voucher or the moving to work vouchers. So we can apply for those as they come up. We can also take in more portabilities and raise our revenue that way.
Okay.
But they're still not our vouchers. They're
Right.
other housing authorities vouchers. So those are just different ways that we can look at it.
How do you determine how much money we get?
Big old math equation.
It's, I don't think they've really kind of looked at, Longmont has grown
Right.
a lot,
Yeah.
in recent years. And I don't know if they look at that yearly or if they look at that at every census, period. I'm not sure how, I think it's every census period that they look at that to determine. They haven't increased the vouchers, for, decades, except just recently, we got, 5 new vouchers.
Yeah.
But other than that, they haven't been increasing that for additional vouchers for a while.
Part of it was performance driven. And so we knew the one thing we had to do is to really understand what the target was and make sure we're getting as close to the target as we could get. So I think when we stepped in, they were issuing like 370.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the fact that in via the 2-year tool, our number should have been 420, now it's adjusted a little bit to 430. So we set the target as part of the goal setting session at that number. They're now at that target. And obviously it moves daily sometimes. So that was the first thing we needed to do, is to show that we can adequately perform, because I think why we weren't getting funds when they were given is because we weren't performing as a housing authority. So check that box. Now the question is how the federal government is releasing the financial funding into then making that available to them. And so we're in a unique period of time where, we can see the whole debt conversations going on, and it's interesting how the two parties are jockeying on that and making adjustments. And very similar to what we do within the CDBG world. It's formulaic, but at the same time, you can see cuts at the federal level, which actually reduces the money you get in. And so we took the approach of control what we can control, which is performance. And then anytime there's opportunities, we'll apply for it, or if they raise it, we qualify for it. And that's, I think, honestly, why BCH and BHP have so many more vouchers than us, is because the performance is at a higher level for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So is there any thought to, as some of the vouchers are out of Longmont, as they become available, keep more of them in Longmont? And I realize it has a lot to do with what rents are available.
Well, and I think that's a long-term discussion that Harold is addressing now. With half of Boulder County's vouchers are in Longmont. What does that do? And it goes down to even the payment standard. Now, the payment standard is being increased by Boulder County and this Boulder Housing Partners. And we're not going to increase our payment standards, because here in Longmont we don't see a need for it. So that's going to be an issue that we're going to probably have to deal with in the future, about landlords asking why ours is a little bit lower and the people coming in from the city of Boulder or Boulder County is higher. So we'll keep an eye on that and adjust it when needed. But when you up your payment standard, then what you're doing is you're reducing the number of people that you can help.
Right. Yeah.
So I think at this point we've decided to just kind of stay at the payment standard that we're at.
Yeah, so this conversation is becoming even more complex.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, this goes back to, I think it was 2016 when we had all the city councils meet at Xilinx, and where we had a meeting. Heather Balser and I actually were the master of ceremonies, for lack of a better word on that one. where all the cities agreed to 12% affordable housing goal and things like that. And one of the things we talked about with the council is everybody drafted a resolution, but there was never anything holding us accountable to it. And so the genesis of this conversation, based on what Molly said, is she's starting to send me reports in terms of housing generally in the community, in our housing study that we're doing. And so it starts connecting to a lot of different things now. When we look at Prop 123, the state looks at it in terms of what do you have in capital A affordable housing that we build, and what do you have in terms of
Naturally occurring
affordable housing. And when I started just looking at the data, and you know, you hear what I say, Longmont's the most affordable community in Boulder County. And so intuitively, it's like, I wonder how many people from vouchers that are coming outside of us, VHP and VCH, are actually living in Longmont. And is that impacting the ability of our voucher holders to find affordable housing with their vouchers?
Is that an issue?
It's an issue. And so where it's expanding, it's actually probably expanding beyond our world, because it's now starting to touch the conversation that every city had at that initial meeting in terms of what we were doing, how we're going to work together. So it starts impacting what is it, BCHS, Boulder County Housing Solutions, and how that conversation is going to go. Something that I want to dig into, not with this group, but with another group, is to understand what's the functional impact to the city as a whole. So typically when you look at it, you have to be 30% AMI or below to get a housing choice voucher. What we intuitively know is that the social service needs with individuals in that category are much different. And so what is the impact, not only to us as an organization and the social services we provide, but what is the impact to our nonprofits in the community that are providing the social services? And so we're not sure where the conversation is going to go, but we think it's a conversation we have to have. So, you know, Molly mentioned the 50%. I mean, that was like, oh boy. So I'm going to start talking to my counterparts and just saying, here's what I know. I can't unhear it. I've got to talk to our board and council about this, and we'll see how it goes. But I think the broader impact, the impact to our community as a whole, is something we need to try to understand. So, you know, I'll probably bring in police and some of our data analytics groups to start digging into not the housing authority side, but the broader community side.
I'm still sorting through what you're saying. A person in Boulder gets issued a housing voucher, they can come use it in anything else.
Well, the system itself, so if somebody from Loveland or Fort Collins comes here, we port those in.
Which means we administer the voucher, we collect the administrative fee from HUD. Before doing that work, we can sort through.
So right now we've got two.
Right.
Right, okay.
And we have the choice of how many vouchers we can absorb. We don't have to absorb what we can't handle.
So the way the system is set up via HUD, that's the way it works. If you move out of your designated operating area, the receiving operating area has a choice. And so for us, it's also a financial. We have to look at it and do a financial analysis on what can we absorb with our increases, with our staff that we have, where we need to increase, what's the approximate staff increase. That's the choice component on the community or community.
So what you're saying is, if I understand this, my simplicity.
Well, let me get to the punchline on this. The punchline is, that's how the system works. In 1989, there was an agreement between all of these agencies that said, our folks can move back and forth. and the agency that has the voucher will just keep it. Now we know, at least in one case, 50% of those voucher holders are not.
But we are not administrating those vouchers. We don't collect the fees for that administration, or we need revenue. I think just decades of that arrangement has brought us to where we are. And now we need to figure out, does that still work? Does that not work? And what to do to see how we are in the next couple of decades.
At multiple levels.
As an end user of the said product, I have a lot of opinions about it.
Please share.
I think that as a naturally occurring affordable provider of affordable housing, I think if I have a voucher holder that comes from over and Longmont Housing Authority and I'm same, I'll always be looking at so I think I'm always thinking of Boulder County voucher holder for Longmont Housing Authority, 100%. Just being honest, I know a lot of other small neighborhoods do exactly the same. Because Longmont Housing, their online work, their online stuff is non-existent or abysmal, very difficult to work with as a landlord. Hard to get an inspection without a third-party inspector, yes. We're out of the south, I think. We used to have an in-house inspector, who was our
Inspecting inspection.
The same one that's over money.
Okay. So we use the same inspector as.
But it used to be
other-
in-house, yeah, and now it's a third party. Right?
Yes, and there was reasons for that. It was unsafe in some circumstances to send staff in that wasn't trained.
Yeah, no, but in terms of like scheduling that, it's a disaster. I mean, it's so easy to do with Boulder. You go into the portal, you hit schedule, they schedule it, they come. For Longmont, like, my history's been like the tenant or myself has to call the old school like style and we'll submit a form, and it's by the time they would get approved for the inspection to move in, they're done. I'm not gonna wait 6 weeks for you to get an inspection to move in. Like, the same inspector will come in 10 days for everything. So I think looking at usability to the landlord might mitigate some of the issues.
I think we have a 5-day turnaround requirement with our inspector.
No, it's getting right.
Yeah, so we have to wait for the rafted, and then once we get the rafted, then we have to
But it doesn't,
request it.
it feels like it doesn't work the same between the two agencies. I'm just saying, it doesn't.
Can they request it online? No?
We've looked at that. Kendra was looking at more of a user-friendly portal where all of that could be done, annuals could be done online, all of that could be done online, and it was just, at this point, just too expensive.
And Boulder has that. So it's so much easier for me as a landlord to interface with them. And it just feels completely onerous. Like, no one ever answers the phones. You can't get anyone to call you back. I tell people we're recording it, and I'm like, oh my God, don't record it. So you can avoid it. Record it in Boulder. It's just too difficult as the landlord. And I know that individual landlords, small landlords, just won't deal with it because it's too hard to actually get them with that.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that we're trying to figure out all the angles to like research or address this from. We're looking at the regional angle, the community angle, the budget angle. We need to look at our user experience angle.
Yeah, from the landlord perspective, if you want people to actually take your vouchers, instead of taking Boulder County's vouchers, you gotta make it same or easier to use.
We know it. That's interesting. If we look at automation of the process and the value we get, because that may mean we drive harder on the 50% issue and use the revenue to automate, which will increase the workload on the city and capacity through automation. And so that may mean what we have to push on. Because our challenge is we don't have the money.
Yeah, sure.
And so if we can leverage say we're gonna port in X amount, and we use that money to automate, but yet we don't tangibly change the work because of automation. That may be part of the solution.
And again, you know, they have over 1,000 vouchers that are operating, so they've got more than double that.
I'm just saying as my experience is, I'm always gonna take a voucher over a Longmont Housing.
Yeah, and now their payment standard is gonna be higher.
And then it would even, like, why would you ever take a Longmont voucher? It's gonna make it harder. It's already hard, but it'll make it harder.
So that on the payment standard, this is what we've been looking at so far. ECHA did the payment standard increase first. First of all, in January, all of us went up to 105%. And then ECHA in March moved to 110. And they told us their folks were having a hard time leasing up with the 105. Boulder Housing Partners followed suit here a couple weeks ago and did the same. So there is something to balance here regarding we are partners, but also competitors if we want to stay and have our vouchers in the same pool. But also, in our experience, all of our people are leased up. It hasn't been a struggle. We would, if we did that, we would have to shrink our voucher program basically by, we wouldn't be able to add more. So from our standpoint, it doesn't actually make sense budgetarily, but we know that our vouchers are out there on the streets with others, so that's something we're weighing.
And Boulder got, you know, they got a 10% increase, we got a 7%.
Right, they got more funding than we did.
So that's the balance that I think we're looking at.
I don't even think it's the extra, like, for me, I don't think it's the extra, whatever, $35 a month that something you're gonna, it's the ability to function in the system itself, right? How much easier it is to function.
So that's a great point, actually, because it shifted, I mean, just really quickly, it's shifting how I'm thinking about it is to understand what automation can do and automation with workload. And so, you know, because what we were afraid of is if you absorb let's just say 200 vouchers, what does that mean for workload? But if you can build automation into the absorption of it, maybe the tangible workload is not drastically different.
Well, as a landlord, I can go into their portal and request the change request for rental or whatever. Now, for Longmont, I'm writing it all like in letters and mailing it with a stamp and, you know, just, I mean, and then making phone calls to get things scheduled and you can't get anyone to pick up the phone. So I'm just saying if you made it easier, everyone.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
And it would cut down because, you know, we spend a lot of time shuffling people.
I'm sure you do. I think it's insane, like the amount of the actual triplicate copy things you get from Longmont Housing Authority. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, is it 1982? You know, I mean, really, it's very antiquated.
And the reality is, I mean, the answer to your question, we'll just use 1989, is it?
I mean,
that's kind of what we absorbed because it was as basic as having to move them onto the city IT system, and in terms of just basic work and maximizing how we use Yardi and those issues. Yeah. And so,
and filing cabinets in the bathtub.
And literally, filing cabinets in the bathtub.
I mean, that's right.
Yeah, so no, that makes good sense, and they're shifting my mind a little bit. And at the end of the day, you know, there's about 10 different ways to leverage this conversation. And the question is what's the most beneficial for us?
Is this a City of Longmont County? Can we, I mean, I don't know if this makes sense, but financially, is it possible to just coordinate with them and have them, for a price, of course, pick up that automation workload instead of us recreating it? We
maybe
just outsource the.
Yeah.
I think that's
And they've already got it in place. It's probably not that difficult to expand its capacity.
Yeah, it's getting reported, so that may be part of it. You know, we may not want to absorb it, say, here's the cost impact to our community and leverage it. I mean, literally, we've talked about a dozen ways. But,
University,
pardon?
not one of the universities.
I think if we did it, we'd want to stay with whatever ties into Yardi, which is what I'm assuming the system is that they have,
Yeah,
because you have to have that natural integration in with Yardi, so,
And that's what we were looking at, is upgrading it to the same type of modules they have for their onboarding, or not onboarding, their portals.
Is it already a government system or a private?
It's a private systems that a lot of housing authority uses. But, you know, every portal costs. And when you're looking at only, you know, receiving funding for 430 vouchers, that kind of limits you.
Again, we're at that stabilization period. We're looking to expand, and we gotta figure out our paths that we're gonna do and the priority order. If we're limited on funding, how are we gonna grow, but also strategically spend the money in the ways that help us grow? And then the other thing that I was thinking of, I mean, administering BCHA and BHP vouchers, I mean, there's a lot. That's not a simple thing, and it's probably a long-term thing. So that's what we've been talking about, is what else could we do on the periphery that would bring in value to the community or revenue to the housing authority, or cost savings if it's borrowing automated systems. What else could we do to help balance things if it's not administering the vouchers? Because that's, shrinking their programs is not necessarily a thing that just happens.
well, the thing for us that we have to look at with this too, but even porting in, we learned doesn't do this, is what does it mean for project-based vouchers? Because you need project-based vouchers to make development work. And so that may be another angle that we take, is to get project-based vouchers in as well. So, I mean, you just heard like 8 different options. And it's fine-tuning what is the best place. It could also be, we're gonna hold here, but anything new, we're gonna take it. I mean, there's so many different iterations, but we've got to figure out what's best for us, which is why we're driving development, because the only thing we can really control to increase revenue is to drive development. Because development increases revenue into the housing authority via staffing and general fund revenue. And if you can make that strong enough, then sometimes you can use some of that money to buy some of these modules and start moving in that direction. So,
Is there anything else we can control that, if you can't impact this, is there something else you can offer the landlords to offset the pain?
I'm not sure.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like, I was meeting there the other day, we were talking about sustainability. You know, we kind of got the discussion finally down to, let's quit talking about what we can't do. What is it you guys can do that's, that you have already built resources that we can expand on? Supposed to spend all our time arguing on stuff we can't. It's just not feasible in this
I
environment.
think it is the point that you just made on the automation. We can automate to make it easier. We just have to figure out a way to fund it.
I think we're at a point, we're pretty stable right now. They've gotten policies in place, so it's faster, it's better, but again, I think we could improve and save a lot of staff time if it was automated. Even with the properties, the lifestyle properties. If, you know, doing recertifications online and all the documents are online, we're trying to go paperless. You know, and that would fit in with that goal too.
Janet, you said you had a number of comments. Did you have anything else that you wanted to?
I mean, in my head, probably. I can.
Well, think about it.
That's just just the usability.
Because that's what we're trying to map out, right? What are all the factors and which route do we need to go first? And so anything you think of after the fact, we would like to hear.
And does the project-based vouchers decrease our housing choice vouchers?
It does.
It does, okay. I mean, that's my preference, is always a project-based rather than because that's more money in our pocket for us overall, and it's easier to administer for us overall. And then kind of piggybacking on Jenna's comment, what about the ease of use then on the tenant side as well?
Yeah.
So those kind of tie it all together.
Yeah, that's-
Kind of be the same thing.
Yeah, it would be
okay.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
They can go in there and do their annuals instead of coming in with all the paperwork.
Yeah, but it's
And
Yeah, right.
literally stacks.
Yeah, and if we go the paperless
Mhm.
route, I mean, we should be there now almost. Yeah, but
And-
it's the money.
And the likelihood of misplacing paperwork and causing issues that way.
Well, with staff turnover, like somebody should have someone turn over in the middle and then everything, you literally have to start over. And that's just, it's bad, I think maybe it's better now, I mean, maybe more stability there, but yeah, that would solve so many of those problems. You know? I'm sure it's a big, huge pain for you guys.
Yeah. You know, we're on our third housing choice voucher person, so.
And
What a way.
it gets lost in translation sometimes if you're.
As much as you try not to, you
And we could always change the IGA, or is there?
That's-
Does that
We
change
don't
the
have-
IGA?
I don't think we have an IGA at this point.
I think
We
it's,
haven't
it's
been
kind of
able to find
expired
it.
now.
it's just out and everyone's just been
Everybody's-
moving along.
And the way that it is Longmont's area is Longmont.
Yeah.
Boulder County is Boulder County, mine is Longmont.
Yeah.
And City of Boulder is, City of Boulder.
Okay.
So it was an agreement years ago that we would just allow all of our participants to go countywide.
Which,
But they're ending up, again, in Longmont, because it's more,
maybe that was an unintended consequence. We think that LHA being a smaller program, yes, having somebody else administer, they can still live here, but having somebody else administer was like, well, then we can handle the capacity. There are probably decisions that led to that. But now here we are. Is that how we want to keep going?
I'd say, if they're in Longmont, especially City of Boulder, the City of Boulder, if they're going to Longmont, we should be reporting them in. That's
when we don't get the total admin
right.
fees, we get a portion. And so that's something that would have to be looked at.
So further, we're in a situation. We could be.
We
getting
could,
that.
if
Yeah.
the housing authority had taken a different stance a long time ago, our voucher program would probably be larger.
Well, to your point, what we could theoretically do is understand what the breakpoints are from a staffing perspective and figure out to say, all right, this agreement is not in our best interest, but we're not going to come in and just say we want all of it.
Right.
We're going to tactically come in and say we're going to absorb X amount as our capacity allows us. And then, in understanding that what we could benefit from automation, we go, what does that mean in capacity? So let's say we figure out, well, if we automate it, that gives us the capacity to handle 100 more vouchers. We would do the math of what we can get and then figure out, all right, 100 makes sense because then we can buy the modules and the modules will allow us to get more efficient. So that's the work I think we have to figure out. And then obviously it's going to be probably when the conversation starts. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. But I think tactically that's what we have to kind of figure out as well.
And we're, at this point, we're trying to convert our 202 properties, the lodge and our stuff into project-based vouchers. So that would be 100 more, and we would be.
So that would add then to our voucher program.
They'd be project-based,
Right.
all of them.
Is it supposed to be additional or just absorb out of the additional?
Additional.
So,
So those initiatives would convert into project-based vouchers. So right now they're under a 202 program, and it works the same way. Basically, the rent amount doesn't, but the concept of 30% of it just doesn't.
Because we register the vouchers in order to pay for those.
Not, they can't accept vouchers
two properties. The manager had to prepare vouchers and we already got paid by that. So it would stop that road on the manager, right? Yeah. So
And then-
the project-based voucher is very different from budget.
And then the responsibility for filling them and finding a tenant would fall on the housing choice voucher.
Yeah,
That would be with the project base.
yeah.
Well, the biggest issue for us actually is on the city side. So when we had that meeting, what was very clear from the council that was in place in the conversation, what you really heard Longmont and Boulder say is, we don't want to be the affordable housing solution for the entire county. And I was out in that meeting, the housing authorities were all part of it as well. And no one brought up disagreements. It wasn't until we took it over and started looking into the agreement. So, but for us stepping in, we probably never would have known about this. And that is, I think, the broader storm that's going to be in play because functionally what's happening is just in one case, Longmont is probably the affordable housing solution for the entire county. And so how we drive the conversation of what our other communities do in terms of affordable housing, or, you know, how are you moving to getting your 12% goal? Because we are seeing communities that have had projects and then back down the project based on different things. And honestly, that's also the genesis of what the state was really saying in Senate Bill 213 is they were reacting to decisions communities were making in terms of building housing, whether it's road caps that we see in Lakewood and Golden. And so that's really what the state was reacting to. So kind of thinking now when I have this conversation with the city council / housing authority board because it's going to trigger some issues.
So I think if you mull on this and come up with any other ideas for ways that we could map out and prioritize what we're gonna do moving forward, we'd love to have it.
Yeah, and that kind
And
of
feedback.
feedback is really good.
Okay, I hope that's what you.
No,
We don't
we need to hear that.
We don't get to hear that very often.
You know, we're kind of in our own bubble right now. I'm trying to get everything stabilized. And I think at this point we need to come out of our boxes and look at different solutions.
My philosophy is we can't fix it if we don't know about it. And so that, I mean, so no, this is great, that was great.
Yeah, and as a landlord, you're the one who can tell us what works for you and what doesn't. We just kind of go along with the way that we've been doing it and without any feedback.
If we really want to know what people think, I have access to ask over 100 landlords, if that's what LHAAB would like.
Well, yeah.
The face of LHA has changed, it really has, but the backside hasn't, right? And that's really what we need to determine.
And we don't know if our landlords and tenants feel the change. We feel it, and we see it in the numbers, but we would like to know if it's projected out to be users.
Remember a few months ago, when we were last meeting together, we were trying to talk to landlords and it was pretty much dead silence.
They sent out a big packet recently with some landlords who use their, I don't know if you saw that, what their housing authority did. They sent out a big, like, hey landlords that were super lender friendly, like, you know, doubling up deposits or doing, you know, all kinds of like case management stuff, and I got that a couple months ago. So they sent out a whole packet to know landlords who use their.
Making it attractive.
Yeah.
Well, and we could do a survey, like when we are ready to automate, let's do a survey to the landlords that are out there, and just to see, okay, what what would be the most user-friendly for you, or what aspects are you looking for?
Because even if you're looking at it in terms of cost savings for the county, and now that it's mandatory, you take vouchers, which I know there's a lot of screening mechanisms to get rid of that, but say you're a bigger apartment complex, and if you're cutting down on their time as well, in terms of accepting that tenant, it makes it more attractive. I mean, if their administrator is spending 3 hours on voucher work, right, they're cutting, and then they can spend 20 minutes. It makes a big difference in terms of their bottom line.
The one thing that I have found is a lot of the other larger complexes they have that portal where they do the lease and all of that interaction with the client. Is a lot of the clients don't understand it, and it's frustrating for them. So we hear it on that side, how they just don't know how to work it. Because we've got a lot of elderly and disabled people.
So that's so interesting. I find also that the voucher holders coming out of Boulder County, either housing centers or the county, are so much more prepared to apply for the unit. So a lot of the Longmont housing voucher holders will come in and they'll be like, I screen everyone who's on now, just make it, just fill out, okay, the one-time fee makes it easy, apples to apples for me. And the amount of Longmont Housing Authority voucher holders who actually follow through with the application process is very small compared to, I feel like somehow there's some kind of case management or something that's happening on the front end where the voucher holders themselves through those agencies is different because they come with their paperwork, they're more likely to fill out the appropriate applications. They feel more prepared to maybe actually apply for it.
And we're. That's,
so that's just
the briefing is basically the same, the type of paperwork, because it's all federal. So that is kind of the same. We're trying to get them more involved, like we have a resume for the tenants. Fill out this resume, have your stuff available. And we find that they're not even doing that. So
yeah, in terms of actually applying for the units, I get that the paperwork's all the same on your end, but on my end, and applications vary widely, right? I don't like any of the housing systems going through the state level, but that's just my own agenda. But I did really like one byline was making a statewide application, like a standardized application that everyone pays a one-time fee, does a credit check, and then all the landlords are comparing. That would be great. Yeah. I'm not sure that was attached to a huge long landlord on the Liberty bill, but I find that the tenants themselves are more prepared for whatever that means. So they're getting something in the front end in terms of, I don't know, education or something about how to apply and what that looks like.
We worked several years ago with Boulder County Housing Authority and City of Boulder regarding tenant education. We had a big collaboration that met for several months, and then COVID hit and that went away, but they ran, and then they didn't recontact myself or Susan Spalding and I were at the table, and they never recontacted us, but I know they're moving forward with a lot of, we had a lot of conversation about the lacks of information for tenants and how there's so much needed for them to be successful, and that might have stemmed from that.
I definitely find it's a new thing. It's a recent thing. But they're much more prepared to apply for the unit. Wherever that means, I don't know. It's kind of fun. That's interesting.
The City of Boulder has a tenant advisory committee now for the city. It's been in operation by a year and a half, I think.
Alright, so let's keep the meeting moving along. So if anybody has any additional stuff, you just want email along, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Alright, let's move on to number 7, resident quality of life. Anybody have anything for this one?
Not from staff. Maybe somebody else wants to bring it up.
See, let's go on to number 8, LHA reports, update on operations, occupancy report.
So just briefly, we're still sitting at 93% occupied. Last month, we made some big changes to how we're going through our wait list. Last week alone, we rented 4 units, and as of this morning, talking to the managers, AMN, Fall River, Spring Creek, and Hearthstone should all be fully occupied besides any meth units by the end of this month. So our occupancy should be increasing by the end of May, early June. We did add 2 new meth units to the list this past week at Briarwood. But currently all of our units are rent ready at almost every single property, and we're just waiting for those tenants to qualify and move in. Any questions on the occupancy report? And then for the property updates, one big update that's not listed on here that was just scheduled is our annual LHA Fair Housing Training will be June 20th at 8:30 a.m. in the council chambers. So if you are interested, please let me know so I can get you on the invitation list. And this will be with Wes Lowenbauer. He's an attorney out of Denver who specializes in the fair housing and ADA compliance. He did our presentation last year and he'll be coming back this year.
Okay.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
First fair housing training, I don't think I got sleepy in. In 20 plus years. So general updates, our April coffee and conversations, I think portfolio-wide were the most productive we've had. I think almost all of them ended within the hour. A lot of productive questions. It wasn't the same questions. Residents actually stepping outside the box, asking questions, giving us ideas, and moving forward with stuff. So far, out of our declutter events, 3 properties have completed it. We're bringing the dumpsters out on site. Our staff showed up to help move stuff out. The Aspens, we actually had to do an extra dump because there was so much stuff between the neighborhood and Aspen Senior. So I think that's great. It's getting the fire loads of the units down. Next week, we bring them to Spring Creek, Fall River, this week is Hearthstone and Lodge, and the next week is Spring Creek and Fall River. And then we'll do Village Place in June.
And I mean, most of the stuff was just in the units themselves, right?
Yeah. Bigger stuff or things I've had residents come up and go, I've had a king size mattress I don't know what to do with for a year because if I put it at the trash can I get charged. So this is giving them the opportunity to dispose of it without that fee or having to pay somebody to come pick it up.
Lisa, have you got communication going out on the warehouse that you're setting up?
Not yet because we're still working through some stuff about the furniture and stuff. We have some donations already that are going from like previous manager units and stuff like that we will be setting up for, we're trying to set up at the suites. We have a lot of extra rooms, taking like the old manager furniture from the Hearthstone, a lot of good items residents may have that are in new or good condition. For when we have the residents who are displaced because of floods, fires, coming out of homelessness that may not have dishes and all that, me and Molly have kind of been brainstorming about setting it up so that when we have those types of situations, we have somewhere that we have stuff that we can give them to get them started and that they're not just coming in with nothing, so.
Yeah, so, but you'll send out a communication
Yes,
on how
yes.
we can connect? Yeah, because some of us are starting to, I've got stuff I haven't used in 2 years, so and it's still really good, so.
And then the Cinco de Mayo events were a big hit. It was really nice to come in yesterday morning and I had 3 or 4 different thank you letters and emails in my inbox, and so kind of a different thing than we're used to seeing from our residents. So my staff, all the managers worked together to pull off all of the events. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun. We had musicians at one, we had the dancers at another, singers at another, so it was a really great turnout. And every property we would sit there and go, okay, I think 20 people are going to show up. We beat the number we set for each property. So, and then we've had the new HCV specialist started for Tracy's department. She has a social worker background, so she will be taking all the suites when she's trained. So I want to go through some of just the properties briefly. The suites, we still have 2 units down for meth and 1 for the leak that are going through the remediation. One of those units will be coming back online at the end of this month. The building attendants that we have, all 3 positions have been hired and going full force for a month. And it's been really helpful and proven to be an asset on that property, because the property is probably the cleanest it's ever been. These gentlemen are cleaning 24/7. They're walking the grounds all night long. I have like the proud mom moments when I get the calls for service from Sarah in the morning, and I see that one of my employees saw a suspicious car, so that they call it in. They see somebody hanging out in the parking lot that's not supposed to be there. They call it in. So it's really productive there. We had 2 evictions last Friday, 1 for Aspen and 1 for Village Place, that were both granted. Yes. Yes, so once we have position in the unit, we will test for that. So, and that's part of our crime-free addendum, and that's where we served them 3 days substantial lease violations, because we were notified through the crime-free program that they had been caught off-site with drugs. And since the crime-free addendum does state that they cannot participate in illegal activities on or off property, it gave us the means to remove them from the property. So,
And that one's in court, kind of a gray area, but when it comes to, the fact of the matter of utilizing meth, that ups the ante as far as moving forward in the court house.
I didn't show up because there was only 2 cases in the line. I had to work all day. That's how my life is.
we're out of there by 11. So, both the residents worked with us and mediated, so it was a pretty easy process. For Spring Creek and Fall River, management has taken over and has partnered with ElderShare. We have the food distributions that go on twice monthly at each property, and there was a lot of inconsistencies between the property, and also with how the agency wanted the program to run. So management observed for a couple of them, went down, did their training program, got certified as volunteers through ElderShare, and now have partnered and do the distribution here on site, but it's opening other doors for the residents at both communities. If they have a resident who moves in who is in need of emergency food, with both John and Gregory being volunteers now with ElderShare, they have access to the food pantry and just make a phone call and go get emergency food if a resident is in need. So, and it's helping also with them communicating with ElderShare the needs of the residents. Of one of the complaints we were having the first few go-rounds was the food that they were receiving wasn't enough to make a meal, or they needed more eggs, they needed more of this or more of that. And so Greg and John have taken that to ElderShare, and this last week they had an increase of eggs. They had stuff that allowed residents to make a full meal from what they were getting through the distribution. The nice little thing that happened at Spring Creek, we budgeted last year for this year to refurbish the garden beds. I believe there's 6 of them out there. They're cedar garden beds, so Dave was able to raise them up about 8 inches, seal them, and we just got the new filter in. So we currently have no open positions in the portfolio.
Age receivables.
I'm gonna do Kendra's age receivables and property financials update since she is home very sick. Forgive me, I'm reading her message. So accounting is currently collecting the data for each property and will be sending past tenant balances over to collections within the coming months. At which point the balances will be written off our books and collections will take over. That's for our receivable aging summary. For most properties, revenue expenses are within a 25% to 36% variance the exception of the items highlighted. There we go. Okay. We're running into high vacancy rates and reaching the annual allowance quickly on Aspen neighborhood, Aspen Carlos Senior, Hearthstone, and the Suites. Lodge and Hearthstone. This is something we've been looking at a lot because we do, so basically we've got budget cushion in there for vacancies that are supposed to last the whole year. And we are approaching them pretty highly on specifically a couple of properties. So we've been working on our waitlist process to make sure we have the means to fill those properties. Once we exhausted the one unit, we exhausted the waitlist, 55 people. But we had other people that weren't on the wait list calling and showing up with an application that day. So we've been considering that once we've gone through our due diligence, followed up the rules and the procedures, and then getting them filled with that person that's sitting there ready to go that qualifies. If we can't, if our wait list is just going all the way through. So we were trying to, I think we've made a huge stride in the past month, plus the spring weather when people want to move has helped. And then she says, if anybody here has any questions, feel free to send them Kendra's way, or you can send them to me and I can block right for her.
My only concern is just looking at Aspen Meadows neighborhood and the AR movement from the 60 to 90 over 90. So it was 101,000 in December, the 60 to 90 column.
Right.
And it moved over to over 90 and it's sitting in the over 90 now.
Yeah.
You can see that on the balance sheet as well. And it has an allowance for bad debt of $133,000. Those metrics, I'll email that over to Kendra.
That's the next unit,
Yeah,
Is that what it
that's
is?
the main reason.
Yeah, because how long is that one being set for again? 9 months,
278 days.
Yeah, but if it's sitting vacant, we're not charging rent on that, right?
No.
Okay.
But that's the one that, so we've got one unit is still down there, and you can correct me if I say anything. But we've got 3 that are rentable. 2 of them have been rented just recently here this month. So we're making it up, but that one unit, what is our, you might have done this in property updates and down the hall. What's that one unit in AMN's timeline looking like?
that one,
B2.
that's the one that we need to figure out with habitat or.
Oh, right, that's the,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's
You're considering
One of the
how
unit-
you rebuild.
Yeah.
Isn't that a
Out of our
TNT
insurance.
Yes,
project-based voucher one?
yes. So with AMN, I know I have one moving in today, and we have one scheduled for next week. We did have another unit that's listed further down on the bad move outs. That one just got turned and Corey was in there cleaning this morning, trying to get that one occupied.
Alright.
So, and that one's been down for 384 days.
Yeah.
And that one had to be completely, almost gutted and out, yeah. We had to redo all the flooring, the carpeting, full paint, and yeah, lots of stuff left.
What's the time difference between getting them cleaned and approved to work and then work? Is most of the time in the remediation process?
It depends on vendors and everything else. Typically, it's the testing results. That's where we have a big gap is we could have it tested and we may not get those results for 2 to 4 weeks. And then trying to get clean bids on them and trying to get the cleaners with the appropriate insurances and everything in there to bid.
And then retest. Cleaners come back. Retest.
Yeah.
It's just rolling, and that's the way the CDPHE rules have it set up, and that's the process.
So most of the time it's actually in testing.
Testing and cleaning.
Yeah, the maintenance.
Do you have to bid every time, or can you just contract with a company that, I know that it's gonna vary depending on the level of contaminant, but
depends on our purchasing policy, with the funding sources for the rebuild.
And our insurance wants to see, if it's going through insurance, they want to see the 3 clean bid. So luckily, the testing company that we work with is really good about, as soon as they have the test results in hand, they are setting up walks with different cleaning companies who are approved through Boulder County Public Health to get them in there all at the same time and give us bids. So we typically have those after the first results within a week or 2.
Any other financial questions?
Going on the voucher issuance account, anything further to discuss on this? We kind of touched on it briefly.
Yeah, we kind of gave the numbers already.
Yeah.
If there's any questions?
Anything from executive director?
I think I covered in the rest of the conversation.
We have been adding on public safety updates from Sarah at the LHAAB board meetings. So, I mean, it is, we
Sarah can take
take
my
much
time.
of our time. But if Sarah wants, I'll put you on the spot, Sarah.
Sure.
Kind of do a miniature.
We've had some, well, camera piece, we finally got a bid, minus Chrisman, staff needs to evaluate that. We have, basically, you know, we didn't add a ton of cameras, but it's really about what's important. So staff needs to decide what direction to go, and there's a lot of different moving factors with that. But we did get the bid back to compare with the others that we had. Meth detector, it must be lost in space. I don't know if there's a failure in New Zealand or what, but talking to Ron yesterday, the gentleman that's supposed to be shipped to, he has not received it yet, so I'm calling and leaving a message today.
Did they give us a tracking number?
He hasn't given us anything,
Okay.
so did tell me it was through FedEx. So that's my due diligence of getting a hold of him and the other folks that we were dealing with to find out what's going on with that. My patience is run out for that one. And as far as the properties go, really been spending a lot of time at the suites. We've had a lot of mental health issues down there, people off their meds, working a lot with CORE, working a lot with MHP, trying to make things work for folks and make things work for the good of everyone else that lives down there. So that's been pretty challenging lately. One specific resident we're putting a lot of staff time into. I set up a meeting independently with an idea I have, and I'm hoping it works with MHP tomorrow. I'm gonna pick this resident up and take her to the place on Kaufman so we can have this meeting. So hopefully we get some good results out of that. I know I'm maybe more hopeful than others, but I'm gonna try my best. So other than that, I have not much. Unless you have any questions for me.
But working with MHP, does everything have to be at Kaufman, or do they make site visits sometimes, or could they be even at the Recovery Cafe if we, could they have
Sure.
an office there possibly?
I asked specifically where the resident wanted to meet, and they asked to meet on Kaufman because we could have met at the suites.
Okay.
Absolutely, that staff is there.
Okay.
So, and then we had a larger conversation with MHP moving forward with public safety and LHA later next week.
Any other questions? All right, any other business that we never said? All right, so let's adjourn at 10:49. Next meeting is June 13th.